Hey everyone, Jennifer Takala here, and we are back today with Rosemary Parker. She is going to talk some more with us today about what we can do during this time to handle our own emotions, with all the stress that's going on, what we're feeling, how we can best just manage ourselves so that in turn we can help our kids with what they're feeling. And so this session is going to be great for those of you who have kids, and also those of you who don't have kids, because it's going to be really helpful for us just as people to learn how to manage our own emotions during this time with the stress that we're feeling. And then it's also going to in turn be helpful for us who do have children to know how, once we're managing our own emotions, how we can help them manage theirs. Because I think it's important for us to remember, I'm reminding myself right now as I'm saying this, that our children are under a lot of stress right now as well. They're living through something that they've never lived through before. They've had a lot of things taken away from them over the last couple of months. And I know that even though they've kind of adapted to this, there's a lot that they're still not understanding, and a lot of emotions they're having to process that they don't even realize are there. And so I'm just really excited, Rosemary, that you're here with us today, that you're going to kind of walk us through some of this and just help us to be better humans and better parents. So thanks for joining us.
Yes, thank you. It's good to be back. So I thought it would be good to start off with scripture. The scripture I have is Proverbs 15:1, and it says, "A soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger." And I thought it was appropriate to start with that because harsh words do stir up anger. They're painful. And God wants us to come with patience and calm and be affirming and loving. And that not only applies to our children, but it applies to us as well and to our spouses. We want to be very patient and calm with ourselves. So the purpose of what I'm going to talk about is going to be mainly focused on how can we as parents manage our emotions, because when we manage our own emotions, we're not only modeling that, but we're learning how to teach our children to do the same in a manner that's going to help them when they become adults themselves. So we're going to talk about anger a lot, right? Because that's the main thing that we can recognize. But what we don't often recognize is anger is just a symptom of something deeper. So we call it a secondary emotion because it's not really the primary thing that's causing us to respond that way. It's just what we can easily identify. Our emotions trigger responses in our brain, such as the fight, flight, or freeze mode. And so when we get irritated or overwhelmed, it triggers sometimes our fight response, which comes out in anger. So I want to first start off with, before I get into anger, is whenever we come into a situation, we feel ourselves becoming overwhelmed or irritated, we want to stop. Okay, so that is actually an acronym, STOP, stop. And you can actually think about the stop sign. All right, so I'm getting upset, I need to stop. S literally stands for stop. T stands for take a deep breath. Notice what's going on inside of you, which is actually the O. So observe what's going on inside of you. And then P is to proceed in a manner that's more effective. When we stop and allow our brain to come out of that fight mode, we're then able to use the front part of our brain, which is called the prefrontal cortex, that allows us to think appropriately. Oftentimes we think we have to fight the situation at that moment when it occurs because it's immediate, but that's not necessarily the truth. So employing that acronym, we're going to stop and do something different. So with the T, I said, take a deep breath. Now what this can look like, it can be your normal breathe in and then exhale out. And you can actually tell yourself, calm down and relax. I am not in any danger, relax when you're breathing. Or you can use a breathing technique where you breathe in for 4 breaths, and if you feel comfortable, you can hold it for 4 breaths and then release it. Again, this is allowing your brain to come out of that fight response, because this is very important, especially when you're working with your children, because whatever they were doing when you were interrupting, and say it was a bad behavior, a behavior you consider to be inappropriate for your home, they're not going to remember that behavior. They're going to be thinking about how you are responding to them at that moment. So if you're responding to them like a mama bear, going to attack, or a lioness, then they're going to forget what was happening before then and pay more attention to how you're responding.
Mm.
So we want to stop and calm ourselves down. The O stands for observe what's going on inside of you. There's another acronym I'm going to introduce at this time because it's going to help explore this a little more. It's called the HALT. HALT. So, are you hungry? Are you angry? Are you lonely? Or are you tired? If you're experiencing any of those emotions, it is not the appropriate time to engage with your spouse or with your children, because you're not going to make the best decision. You're not going to respond appropriately, and it's going to cause more distension. So with the observe, you're going to go inward and say, okay, what is going on inside of me right now? And I want to share with you the anger iceberg. So we're going to tackle the anger one first. And so hopefully you can see this very well. The anger iceberg, it shows you that at the tip of the iceberg, you can identify anger real easily, but there are other things that are vying for our emotions that we aren't necessarily recognizing, such as being overwhelmed, being depressed, feel like you're being rejected, or annoyed, or exhausted, disappointed, offended. These are all emotions that can come out as anger, and oftentimes can be easily fixed or addressed in the moment. So if I give you an example, if you feel that you are rejected by, let's say, your spouse, then you may respond in a way that is going to cause more tension between you, instead of expressing, I feel rejected right now, or I feel hurt when this happens, which I'll get into in a moment when we talk about other coping skills. So I just wanted to show you that this is readily available on the internet. You can look at this and just try to identify what is exactly happening with me that I can work with. So with that observed, you're going to proceed. So let's say you identify that there is an emotion that you are actually dealing with. A lot of times it can be tiredness, right? So perhaps you're not getting enough rest. You're going to proceed in a manner that actually helps the situation. We call these coping strategies. So the first coping strategy I'm going to talk about is calming. And this is actually takes place with the T, taking a deep breath. Deep breathing is a major one. Another calming strategy is prayer. You can stop in a moment and invite God into the situation. Lord, help me figure out how to help this child, or how do I speak to my husband in a way that still communicates love and respect, because that's a big thing. Or, Father, help me understand why I feel this way so I can learn how to deal with it. Again, learning yourself helps you teach your children in the same term, okay? Another one is meditation. I talked about this last time. Meditation is really good. There are so many apps available that are free. YouTube has a meditation. Podcasts have spiritual meditations that you can attune to. I think one of them is called Encounter. Meditation brings you to the inside of your body. So you think about your breathing, you're relaxing, you're focusing on something positive instead of negative, which negative spirals you more into, I'm getting more angry and irritated. I'm so overwhelmed, I can't do this. You go into all those patterns that's not productive. Another one is taking showers, bathing, or yoga, or something like that. Something that's going to bring you down out of that emotional response that you're currently in. Another another technique is called communication skills. So once you observe, like, I'm really frustrated because this is happening, and I've said this over and over and over to my children that I would like for you to do these things, and you're not listening to me. You can sit down with your child when you are calm and have that conversation. I feel very frustrated. Every time I ask you to clean up, you always have a response to me that makes me feel like I'm not being respected. And I really don't like that feeling. I would love for you to listen to what I'm asking you to do the first time. And then if we can't listen, then the consequences will ensue. With that one, you definitely need to have your expectations lined out in the beginning and the behavioral consequences that are appropriate for the misdemeanor already in place, so they understand why you're having that conversation. But what you're doing is you're talking to them in a place of calmness. And in our brain, we have these mirror neurons that attaches to our emotions in a sense. So when you're speaking calmly to them, they're able to hear that more readily than they will in the moment when you're yelling at them. I've told you time and time to take care of this, and you're still not listening to me. And they shut down, they don't hear. So being able to remove yourself and then come back and have that conversation with them, it teaches them to communicate with their words as well, because that's what you want them to do, especially with children, small children. We have the whiny voice, right? Oh my gosh, that drives so many of us insane. It's like, can you just talk to me? So you need to think about preparing in advance how you're going to respond to these situations so that when you are more calm, or maybe in the moment because you know how you're going to respond, you can take that deep breath and then proceed with that consequence or with that, I call teachable moments or parenting, however you want to look at it. Essentially what you're doing is, this is how we'll like to see your behavior. I love you, I adore you, but let's try speaking in this manner. If I can give a quick example, it would be, can you please talk to me in your big girl voice? Or it's really hard for me to understand when you're mumbling. So trying not to ridicule them, but just giving them information to know that at that present time, your behavior is hard for me to understand. Within the communication skills, there's other things such as listening. So listening is important. Your kids are going to come to you with some things, and you may feel that it's irrelevant at this time because it's pertaining to what is happening in the moment.
Yeah.
And your response would be to, it's not a big deal, get over it. In essence, what you're saying to your child is your emotions don't matter, and you can just get over that, can't you? Why can't you get over that? And so we're instilling some thoughts into their mind that they later may have to deal with for a long time. And so listening would be, oh, okay. So what you're saying is you felt upset because you weren't able to complete that video game like you wanted to, even though their mom would think it's just a video game. But for them, it's important. And that goes a huge way in this time where they aren't fully understanding, as you said earlier, Jennifer, they have emotions there that they aren't even aware of or why they are having those emotions. And so it comes out in other areas. Our kids play games. So it comes out a lot of times with their frustration in their games. They're not able to control it because they can't control their environment now. And so just talking with them like, oh, I can tell that you were really frustrated. You really was trying to work hard to get your fingers to move as quickly as you can, but you couldn't, could you? You know what? You're getting better. I think over time you'll be able to get to it. So relating to them in some aspect. For me to do that, I have to relate to when I get frustrated with certain things and I have a hard time and I put in a lot of work and I'm still not getting the result that I want. That actually de-escalates them because they feel validated. You asked the question earlier, how do we help them manage their emotions? We have to validate them. And that's a good way of doing it, is just stepping into that moment with them and saying, I understand this is really difficult for you, and not dismissing them. The other communicating skill that goes a long way is using timeouts. So if it's just not the time, you observe that this is just not the time for me to be handling this. I'm way too overwhelmed. Just have a timeout. You talk to your spouse, hey, I really think we need to talk about this, but right now I really can't. I need a moment to calm down. And even with your kids, I've done this. Like, mommy's just having a really hard time not getting frustrated right now, and I need some time to just think about what's happening. We'll talk about this later. Can you please go do, play in your playroom or go to your room and do something until I can calm down? And they understand that and relate, and then they walk away. So again, you're preserving the relationship when you do those things, and you're teaching them appropriate ways to respond to their own frustrations. I have a few more coping skills. The thinking skills would be challenging your negative self-talk. Why do I feel like I can't get this stuff done? Or whatever it is, I'm not a good mom, or so-and-so seems to be handling homeschooling, working from home, and having a social life. Why can't I do it? Like, all those things are negative and they're not constructive. And that's harsh. Those are harsh things to yourself. So you got to be gentle with yourself. Hey, I have some strong things that I can focus on. Maybe I'm not that good at juggling multiple things. No one really is good at juggling multiple things, by the way. But you can focus on what you're good at and give your attention there, and focusing on what's most important at this time. Not necessarily comparing yourself, because we all know where that leads, right?
Yeah.
And then making a list. When you're overwhelmed, you're probably thinking about all the many things you have to do. Make a list. You can put it in black and white. Look at what's most important versus what's urgent, because those things will help you to not feel as if you're tackling this all on your own. Because you can also ask your husband or your wife for help. Hey, here are the things that I'm struggling with. Can you please help me with that? Mm-hmm. And that invites your husband into a supportive role, or your wife, because they want to support you. But if we don't articulate, if we don't communicate what's going on inside of us, how can they help us? They can't read our minds. And that goes back to that I statement. If you're becoming annoyed with your husband about something that he's not doing, he doesn't know he's not doing it, then you might need to voice it. So remember to do those things. It will go a long way. The next one I want to talk about is connecting. So you take that moment, you stop, you think, and you observe that, I feel lonely. Who's the last person that you talked to? Family member, a friend, a safe person that you can express your emotions to without feeling belittled or berated. Those are great things. And speaking to someone who is specialized in this area is an even greater thing. Like, no one's above therapy. Like, therapists get therapy too. So connecting is a huge thing. That's how God wired our brains to be in community. And we want to surround ourselves with those people who speak into us and can actually see those positive things that we are failing to recognize because we want to beat ourselves up. Because somehow that feels better to beat ourselves up. I don't know why, but it feels better.
Yeah.
So we need someone to say, you're an awesome person, and they're not lying. Because we are God, because we are God's children, we are awesome. We need to remember that. And just have a few more releasing skills like running, push-ups, journaling, holding ice. Those are good to help us release our emotions. You can actually teach those to your children when you notice that they are becoming overwhelmed. For instance, my oldest, I noticed that she likes writing and drawing. When I notice that she's becoming upset, I'll pull her into me and I'll hold her. And then I say, it looks like you're having a hard time. Would you like to go journal or just draw or something? And then if she feels that way, she'll go do it and she'll come out feeling much better. Because kids need to learn how to self-soothe themselves. Like, we can't do that for them, but we can teach them skills. And then sometimes, she may say, no, I just want you to hold me. And that's perfectly fine. For my youngest, he needs to do something. So I'll engage him in cleaning, or I actually have him do push-ups or something. And actually in our house, there's a rule that you have to do 10 push-ups a day because they're in his house. They're not outside all the time. We need to release that energy. So we try to make it fun, doing those things as well. But they're coping skills. Those same things that you use if you exercise. I like running. I go for a run when I feel like I'm getting overwhelmed. These things apply to our children as well. Some distracting skills would be doing puzzles, organizing, using humor. So opposite reaction is what is called in therapy. If you feel sad, try to watch something that's happy or funny, and you trick your brain into experiencing a different emotion. If you're angry, watch something or listen to something that's calming. Again, you're tricking your brain. Your brain is so powerful, but at the same time, it can be easy to trick. So those are things that you can do in with your children too. They getting rambunctious. Hey, let's do a puzzle together. Let's go do some other things that helps get your mind busy or something like that. And then the last one is self-soothing, viewing art, playing music, eating a favorite food, applying scented lotion, looking at photos. Those are common because they can our brain, again, gets triggered in thinking about happy moments. Looking at photos is a really good one in our home. We'll look at photos from the past and start laughing or reminiscing, but it takes you out of that immediate motion of I need to fight or I need to flee. If that's one of your immediate response to being overwhelmed is withdrawing from people, then it can help bring you out of those emotions. So I went over a lot there, but the biggest thing I want you to take is that you want to stop. You want to think about the halt. I'm hungry, yes. I'm
Both.
I'm hungry, I'm angry, I'm lonely, I'm tired. Cannot stress enough about sleep. It is a huge, huge factor in how you deal with your stressors. And for your children, we have a sleep routine in our house. It is instituted. We follow it because we know how important it is. If our children are getting enough sleep, they're cranky the next day, they don't want to do their work. We have to teach them. We have to reinforce it because they're not going to want to follow a sleep routine all by themselves. You enforce it. They come out of the room, you see if it's a need, and you tell them go back to bed. You keep that up until they understand that this is what is expected of them. But then for yourself, have a sleep routine. My sleep routine starts about an hour before I go to bed, some at least 30 minutes before you go to bed. Because your body keeps the score is what it's called sometimes, but that deals a lot with trauma, but your body do remember things. It remembers your routine. So if you started an hour before, your body's already thinking, ooh, we're getting ready to go to bed. It's time to start relaxing. But whatever it is, whatever things you include in it, try to keep it consistent. Mine is reading and doing meditation at night. And so yours can look differently. It could be taking a bath. Of course, I brush my teeth, but things like that that trigger your brain. So when you lay in bed, immediately your body is like, let's get some rest. And when you exercise during the day, you get better rest at night.
That's good.
Okay. So that's what I have as far as how to manage your own emotions, and in turn, you're teaching your children to do the same.
Rosemary, this is so good. Man, I started taking notes and then I was like, oh no, I can watch this later. So if y'all see me looking down at one part, that was why. I'm gonna go back and watch this right now. I could have used this morning. We had a rough morning at our house today, and there are some things that you shared with us just now that absolutely could have helped me this morning and will help me next time. We have an issue. So good. Thank you so much. I'm just going to close us in prayer real quick, if that's okay with you, and then we will sign off. But thanks again for being here today. We appreciate you so much. God, we just come to you today, Lord, thanking you for just the resources that you have given us, people like Rosemary and other professional counselors, Lord, who have the education and the knowledge to help us when we need help, God. Just thank you so much for that. Thank you for creating Rosemary the way you created her and giving her the gifts that you gave her, Lord. We just thank you for her, God. I just pray also, Lord, that you would forgive us when we don't react the best way, when we don't make the best choices, when we lash out. Lord, I just pray that you would forgive us for that, God, because we know that that's not the best way to handle things. And so I pray that you also would help us not to beat ourselves up when we do that, Lord, but to remind us gently that we have tools, God, for helping us with that, and that you are there to help us with that too, Lord. And so I just ask that as we continue these stressful times, Lord, at home, that you would just gently remind us that you are a good father and you have equipped us to be good parents, Lord, and just remind us of these tools that you've given us, that especially in the moments where we feel angry, Lord, that you would remind us to stop, and that you would remind us to just take a deep breath, cool down, and remind us that our little people are that, God. They are little people. They're not just children. They are people, Lord, and they have big emotions, and you have entrusted them to us to help them with that, Lord. And so, God, I just praise you and thank you for your goodness, your kindness, your grace towards us every day, Lord, and your mercy. God, we love you, and it's in your son's name we pray. Amen. All right, Rosemary, thanks again for being with us, and we will see you soon.